Hey everyone, I want to recommend a podcast. Hard Knocks is a show about resilience, self-discovery, and finding meaning after chaos, hosted by Amanda Knox. Each week, Amanda sits down with fascinating guests, writers, thinkers, artists, to explore how we learn, grow, and rebuild ourselves after life knocks us down. Amanda brings humor, honesty, and hard-earned perspective to every conversation, drawing on her own experience of being wrongfully convicted and rebuilding her life. Amanda was a guest on Life in 7 Songs in one of our most moving episodes, opening up about how music became a lifeline during her years of wrongful imprisonment. On our show, she spoke candidly about turning pain into wisdom and also about how we're all so much more than our worst moments. If you liked that episode, you'll love her show, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
When you've had a career and you've been working actively for so long and then you're not, you get to sort of look at what's left over. What do I do now? What's my worth? What am I worthy of?
This is Life in 7 Songs from the San Francisco Standard. I'm Sophie Behrman. My guest this week is Mayim Bialik. Mayim captured hearts as the quirky teen star of the 90s sitcom Blossom. Then she stepped away from acting to pursue a PhD in neuroscience before she eventually returned to TV, this time to play a neuroscientist on The Big Bang Theory. She's starring alongside Adam Driver and Cate Blanchett in the new film Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, which hits theaters next week. Mayim has written books, she's hosted Jeopardy, she's a mom. You might say she's done it all. And yet, she still finds herself evaluating her worth. Of course, she has some theories as to why. Mayim Bialik, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's start with your new film, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother. I understand it deals with a lot of complex family dynamics, which I found interesting because family plays a big role in your song choices as well.
Yeah, I'm in a film that Jim Jarmusch wrote and directed, which is very exciting, working with a director that I've always loved, and in particular to get to also work with Tom Waits as an actor and to hear him sing, because he sings a lot just in his life. And I actually play Tom Waits' daughter. He was just a huge musical force also from my early life, and that was a really amazing kind of musical thing and something I wish my dad was alive to be able to hear about.
Tell me a little bit more about your dad.
Well, he passed away 10 years ago. He was 73 and was definitely felt young. He was a beloved drama teacher. His parents wanted him to be an accountant, but he was a dreamer and a poet and a writer. And I still have all of his LPs, and I'm a lot like my dad. I favor him a lot. When we would take road trips, we had the same waking schedule, same sleeping. We needed to snack at the same time. We were just very kind of copacetic that way.
You mentioned road trips with your dad, so let's talk about Bob Dylan's Abandoned Love. Why'd you choose this one?
My dad and I took a series of father-daughter road trips. We didn't have cell phones, so we would get, a map from AAA. You would tell them where you wanted to go and where you wanted to stop, and you would get what's called a triptych. It was literally pages, and every page was 25 miles, and you would just follow the map. And we would just listen to music. We would listen to music literally from sun up to sundown. And, Bob Dylan was next to gospel. It was sacred. It was really sacred music. And when the bootleg albums came out, my dad and I lost our mind. It was it was unearthed Dylan. Abandoned Love is a song with no chorus. There's not even a refrain. But it was just this song that we listened to forever and ever and ever on road trips. And we never got tired of it.
My patron saint is fighting with a ghost. He's always off somewhere when I need him most. The Spanish moon is rising on the hill, but my heart is down at me. I love you still.
Every verse is so beautiful, and it's a very dark song, which Dylan can be. My dad would listen to it over and over and over. He always had music playing. When he was grading papers, he always had music playing.
So tell me more about your childhood home a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up, my parents were, so they were born in the South Bronx and they were living in Manhattan. They moved to the West Coast when my mom was 9 months pregnant with me. And so we lived on people's couches for the first bit. My parents had a 4-year-old and a baby, so they were very bohemian. I grew up in a crummy rental in the Melrose Fairfax area of Hollywood, a lot of immigrant families. There wasn't a lot of money. We heard the word no a lot because, quote, we don't have the money. It's like the best reason to make kids stop asking for something is we don't have the money. So it was a simpler time, but there was also a lot of joy. My parents were very creative. They were both very artistic.
And I know that, no single person has, a perfect life. And I know on your podcast, you've talked about some of the more sort of challenging sides of your childhood. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I made a film called As They Made Us with Dustin Hoffman and Candice Bergen that I wrote after the year of mourning after my father passed. It's not an autobiographical movie per se, but I did want to illustrate, the complexity of families where there is alcoholism, where there is complexity mixed in with also like a lot of love and laughter and creativity. A lot of times we see a very polarized view of what it was like to grow up in a rough house, and in many cases, it's a lot of a mixture. Our parents did the best that they could, with the tools and resources and education they had. And also, my grandparents fled Eastern Europe at a very complicated time in history and left behind most of their families on my mom's side. So we all inherit a sort of genetic load. And for many of us, our immune systems show it. And so, yeah, there's a heavy burden.
I want to talk about another song on your list because it actually relates to some of this. You chose a lullaby called Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? This version is by Bing Crosby.
This is like literally the song that I remember my mother singing to me. Both my parents loved to sing. They loved music. They were both born during World War II. So I never thought that it was odd, that I was singing what I now know is like a Depression era song about like poverty and like railroads. It was just very catchy. And my mother had a beautiful voice. And it's very pretty.
Once I built a railroad, I made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime?
It's funny because like my mom grew up in a tenement house in the South Bronx and my grandparents didn't really speak English. My mother did not speak English in her home of origin. She grew up in poverty. But it's so funny to think that like once she had children, this was the song that she thought to sing. It's just very, I don't know, it's kind of anachronistic. Like it's in the wrong time. I think it's very funny. But I sang it to my kids because it's very catchy and it's great as a lullaby.
So the tradition continued.
Yes.
So how do you think all of these things from childhood shaped you?
It's so interesting because I was, recently kind of studying a little bit about the roles that we take in families. I think I was the helper. Like I'm very, very like, let me help, let me get in the middle, let me like you're fighting, let me get this one to talk to this one. Like a lot of that. And I really was that like kid caught between people and trying to make everything okay. But those tendencies are deeply ingrained. And also we start to sort of think like, oh, that's what it means to be useful, or like, what is my worth in this relationship? And if you think about the relationship between an actor and let's say a director, it's to make someone happy. That's a hierarchical situation, and in many cases a patriarchal one as well, right? It's men kind of in charge of a lot of these aspects. So yeah, I definitely think being, overly flexible, overly amenable, that's a quality that is really revered in the acting industry, because especially with kids, nobody wants a kid that's like, I don't feel like it, They want the kid that's like, I don't have hunger, I never need to pee. Like, when do you need me on set?
And you became an actress at a young age. Was it your idea or your parents' idea?
I really enjoyed performing. I enjoyed being on a stage. I was just kind of a scrappy, kid who wanted everybody to like me. And I was strange and liked to do weird voices. And, I was a quirky kid. And I have a very, successful and charming older sibling. And so I always felt kind of like the troll younger sibling, I couldn't get grades like that. And I wasn't an avid reader, and he was, and that was good. So I always felt kind of like that little sister. As strange as I am as an adult, I was kind of like that as a kid. So. And I think it's funny that my parents humored me because no one looked like me on television in the 80s. The look for child actors was like blonde hair, blue-eyed, all-American, whatever that means. Yeah. So I ended up being cast in character roles. I was on Webster and things like that. And then I was cast to play the young Bette Midler in Beaches. And that came out when I was 13. And then I was on Blossom from the time I was 14 to 19.
I imagine it must have been pretty tough to go through your teen years in front of millions of people every week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to come of age no matter what, but I definitely think that especially if you're a girl that's quirky or isn't, quote, like the other girls, yeah, I think it can be extra challenging. I was always very kind of cerebral and intellectually oriented. I'm a person who kind of tends towards anxiety, and I just sort of like rev high. I like wake up in the morning like, what's going to happen today? And like, here's my list, I started having panic attacks when I was a teenager and thinking I was going to die.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was an interesting set of teen years, but I'm grateful I did not turn to drugs and alcohol. That happened to a lot of people that I knew.
Did you see it and just think or try it, or how did you know?
No, when you would go to parties, you would see that. But my parents weren't square, but they were very socially conservative, and I was always very close to, or they were always very close to me. I didn't really go out and do like the partying thing. That just wasn't my thing. I definitely hung out with Corey Feldman and Corey Haim and like. Soleil Moon Frye and Brittany Murphy, we would all kind of convene, and Neil Patrick Harris. But for me, it was like when it got dark, I went home to get ready for work the next day.
You shared a song from your teen years. It's Kiss Off by Violent Femmes. Why is this the song that comes to mind for that era?
A lot of my process of being a teenager and understanding social dynamics did come from identifying through music. I really am that person who has like a musical soundtrack, which is why I was so excited to do this podcast, because like there's a soundtrack for every, year of my life that I could lay out. My brother's 4 years older than me, and so he was into a lot of really cool music, and he was into Boingo and all this stuff. So I was introduced to Violent Femmes and just became an enormous fan of the entire catalog. I also really love that this is a band of 3 people, and also they used to not have any bass drum. So the bass player basically created the bass rhythm for the entire catalog, which was really unreal to see, because he would play the bass like it was a banjo. I mean, it was amazing.
You can all just kiss off into the air. Behind my back, I can see them stare. They'll hurt me bad, but I won't mind. They'll hurt me bad, they do it all the time. Yeah, they do it all the time.
Yeah, that's the 3 of them, so no bass drum. It's playing, I think, a stand-up snare. I had old Levi's 501s, and I had on the back pockets, it said Kiss Off. That's
really?
How deeply I
love.
That's
what you wrote on them?
That's how deeply, and I wrote it in Sharpie, it stayed forever. Yeah, this song in particular, captured a lot of angst. I felt I was a very strange kind of being in my high school. I wasn't like a flashy Hollywood kid, but I was on TV, I was on people's television, and girls kind of didn't know how to deal with me, and boys definitely didn't know how to deal with me. So I hung out. I found a group of kids, like the punks. That's kind of who I hung out with and felt the most accepted by. But music was a real, through line for me, and the Violent Femmes in particular were a real through line for me.
So after high school, you took a break from acting. You went to UCLA and you got your undergrad degree and PhD in neuroscience. How did you feel about leaving that identity of an actor behind?
I felt excited. I really wanted that. I wanted to be kind of out of the public, arena. I mean, I walked off of a television, though, and onto a college campus. So, everybody had been watching me, 5 minutes before. So it was definitely, I wasn't anonymous, but I did, I studied neuroscience, and in the medical pre-med program, I was able to be pretty anonymous. And I like that. I definitely wasn't top of my class, and I actually didn't even, have the grades to go to medical school. I ended up, going to get a PhD. But yeah, it was an exciting time, and I met the person that I ended up, marrying and being with for 15 years and having 2 kids with. So had some really, terrific years as a normal person, as much as one can call it that.
So you met your now ex-husband, Michael,
Correct.
and you actually shared a song that connects to your early courtship with him,
Yeah.
Elvis Costello's Suit of Lights.
Yeah. I was in math class, calculus, and a guy walked in who looked like Elvis Costello, literally had like the sideburns, the glasses, like the whole bit, wearing an Elvis Costello t-shirt. And Elvis Costello is one of those people who the fans kind of look like Elvis Costello. And so, yeah, I had never met another human, that knew all the lyrics, but Mike did, and he had a group of awesome friends. So the reason that I chose Suit of Lights, there's a few songs in my life that when I've heard them for the very first time, I'm certain that I know them and that I've heard them a million times before. And Suit of Lights is one of those songs. The first time I heard it, I just got chills.
Anyway, they said that she wears the trousers, learned everything that she does, and doesn't know if she should tell him yes or let him go.
Oh, so good. When I think about kind of a musical soundtrack to my life, this was a period in my life that was very heavily infused, with this kind of music. And I remember it, as those years that I was dating. We dated for 5 years and then getting married. And even though I'm divorced, that's still my story. We have kids together, and like that's their origin story, right? Is all of these memories, and in many cases they are musical ones as well.
It's time for a quick break. When we come back, Mayim's second act. Stay with us.
Hey, y'all, each week on The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, we ask big questions and share hot takes about the pop culture we love.
Now that we have YouTube, we don't need any more biopics. If they've been alive such that I can watch them on YouTube, I don't need it.
I don't think that music is getting worse. I think y'all just don't listen to artists who aren't in the mainstream.
Taylor Swift, retire. It's time to retire.
The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
So you and Michael, you were together for 15 years before eventually deciding to divorce. And, your next song is tied to a memory, I think, towards the end of your marriage. It's Hold On by Nico Case. So
Yes.
Tell me about the first time you heard this.
I was finishing my doctorate. So I had my first son in grad school, and I finished my doctorate literally typing, like laying down breastfeeding, typing with one hand. And then I got pregnant with my second son after I defended my thesis and after I filed. And I took my doctoralhood very pregnant with my second son. So I had these two kids, and I wasn't listening to a lot of new music. Mike was the person who listened to new music. He would listen to KCRW, like Mornings Become Eclectic. That was like a thing he had time to do. And he was also actively parenting and getting his master's. But for whatever reason, he was just dialed into new music. I was still like not understanding the internet. Like it wasn't happening. So I remember I was in the parking lot of an Applebee's outside of Salt Lake City, and I remember hearing this song, and I was like, who is that? What is that voice? And he's like, it's this musician I found. Her name's Nico Case. And so began, this love affair. I cannot understand, how a voice like that and a set of writing and communication exists in one human. It's so phenomenal. Her voice is so expansive, and she's like this fiery redhead, and just like the whole portrait of her. It's fantastic. And that song is, I mean, it's just, she sings about so many aspects of the human experience. She's unbelievable.
Well, tell me about Hold On, Hold On. What does it mean to you?
I mean, it's funny because a lot of the lyrics, you know, for a lot of her music, you don't really pick up the first or 10th time, you know? There's something about attention. She leaves a party at 3 a.m. alone, thank God. You know, there's a lot about being this, there's a lot about being an observed woman.
Compared to some I've been around, but I really tried so hard. Gotta go course like Felix. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. In the end,
I was the mean girl. And somebody's in-between girl. Now it's the devil I love. And that's as funny as real love. Oh.
I think you even wrote something about you held on for as long as you could.
Yeah. In any marriage that eventually ends or any relationship that ends, you hold on until you can't. But one of the things that, you know, I'm very proud of is for, you know, the 10 years since we've been divorced, we did family meals together. We did holidays together. We still do that to some extent. It gets different because the kids are older now, but it's very hard. Divorce is really hard. It's hard on kids, even in the best of situations. That's just true. I have 2 really lovely, sensitive children, and it can be complicated. And I think to act like it's not doesn't feel authentic, you know?
Mm-hmm. Your next song is No Church in the Wild by Jay-Z and Kanye West, featuring Frank Ocean and The Dream. Why'd you choose this one?
Yeah, I mean, my kids are into a lot of music that is popular. And at first I was like, I won't listen to anything where every other word is a curse word. Like if the song has to be bleeped so much that I can't even follow along, it's not playing in my car. But what ended up happening is this kind of like evolution of my musical world. You know, I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in public schools. The bus driver would listen to like Belle Biv DeVoe, and like I learned all of my hip hop, you know, through bus rides. But I had never like purchased or even known how to like consume rap, hip hop for myself. But over time, and as my kids have gotten older, like this is something that we kind of connect with together. And they seem pretty cool with the fact that I always sing in the car. Like I'm that mom who like is singing no matter what. And No Church in the Wild is like, it's a combination of so many artists that we listen to separately. So it's also one of these like awesome collaboration pieces, which is one thing I love about this genre of music as well. It's very like mix and match in terms of like talents and words, and like sometimes you'll have Kendrick and sometimes you'll, you know, have, it's just like it's a real smattering, and I love that.
Human beings in a mob. What's a mob to a king? What's a king to a god? What's a god to a non-believer who don't believe in anything?
It's such a well-crafted song.
Really make it out alive.
The PS to this is that the time in my life when I got into hip hop and all of this kind of music, my boyfriend, who's my partner, had been away. And it was in that time, I don't know why it was then, that I started listening to so much more. And when he came back, I was literally like... I knew every Kanye song. I knew the distinctions between Jay-Z, and I knew this. And he said, "What the hell happened when I went away?" And I said, "I don't know. I just like everything clicked about me and hip hop and rap. Like I am in it." And so it's been really sweet because he's been playing me like all of his 90s favorites. And so I'm like seeing also historically where all of this lines up.
So at some point you returned to acting, right? You played a neuroscientist on The Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about your first day back on set?
Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. You know, this was when my kids were little. I mean, I hadn't like had to wear a bra, you know, like I had been in nursing tanks. Like I had been nursing for years by then, and just like had such a different life. And I had never seen The Big Bang Theory. I did not know what the show was. Again, I had kids, I was teaching, like I I was not dialed into the pulse of America. I just wasn't. So it was also meeting all these new people and trying to figure out like all these relationships and who are they? And like, I guess Kaylee Cuoco and Johnny Galecki at that time were dating. Like something about like, just, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about anything. So it's very scary.
But it worked out.
Yeah, that was the next, 9 years of my life. It's a huge chunk of life, especially as a second act. It was a really special place to be.
You've been working since you were 11 or around there.
Yeah.
What role has work played in shaping how you see yourself?
I think as a public person, my work does define me. That's how people know me. It's how I, operate in many places in the world. But I don't really think of myself, I guess, in terms of that. And yeah, a lot of kids say to my sons, like, oh, that's your mom. And like, yeah, they just think of me as like mom who's like always tired and wearing slippers.
I love that. I think you wrote that you've spent the last 5 years now sort of releasing that hold that work has had over you. And then it's like, what's left? What has that looked like for you?
I think it's similar to kind of empty nest syndrome when you've had a career and you've been working actively for so long and then you're not. Yeah, you get to sort of look at what's left over. What do I do now? What's my worth? What am I worthy of? Which is also why things like my faith are so important to me, because there are places where none of that matters and I like to sit in those spaces. It's why meditation is so important, because it takes you out of kind of the material space that we all function in.
Well, that's a really nice transition to your last song. It's called Heaven is Here. Why does this song speak to you?
This is a song that touches on a lot of aspects of the mystical. It's MC Yogi, and then it features Matisyahu. And Matisyahu is a musician who I've, known of for many, many years, very, very significant in the Jewish community and also, in the musical community. And so this song with the two of them, it's beautiful. I find it very meditative in terms of its tone. And when you listen to the words, it's literally things that if you take out a book on Buddhism, a book on Hinduism, you'll find these kinds of notions there. And the section that Matisyahu does is it's just one of my favorites. It's just a really beautiful song.
Born to the dust, rise like a phoenix does. To the gates of the kingdom so glorious. Marching forward into love like a warrior does. Return to the one and become victorious. Illuminate the path, draw the mind back. Illuminate the path.
There's a lot of layering in this song. It starts very small and it gets very big and then it comes back down. A lot of the imagery that Matisyahu uses in his music is very liturgical. And, for those of us who grew up studying Psalms and, the Old Testament, you'd never think that it could fit into a song like this, especially a lot of this imagery, marching forward into love like a warrior, right? And returning to the one, like the one is God. So I also love this ability to have, for me, music that speaks so much to my experience as a human, but also my experience as part of a community that has a specific way that we talk about love, that we talk about survival, resilience. As I've gotten older and as I've had more loss and, my father passed away and as I said, I got divorced and, all these things, it does give you opportunity to kind of draw close in a different way. But I don't only think of faith as also drawing close in hard times, it's also in positive times. To me, acknowledging that I didn't create everything around us is it's a symbol of humility, of how we can go around with a sense of kind of gratitude and appreciation for all the things that we don't create, that are organic, as it were.
Mayim Bialik, thank you so much for sharing your 7 songs.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Life in 7 Songs is a production from the San Francisco Standard. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and review the show. It makes a big difference for us. Senior producer is Jasmine Morris. Our producers are Michelle Land. She also mixes the show, and Tessa Kramer. Theme music by Kate Davis and Zubin Hensler. Jess Hutchison created our show art. Our music consultant is Sarah Tembekshian. As always, you can find this guest's full playlist at sf.news/Spotify. I'm Sophie Behrman. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.